A defining feature of Jewish culture is to argue for the sake of argument. Rabbis have defined the ritual practices of the Jerusalem temple for 2,000 years without an actual temple. The planned location of that temple is currently occupied by the Dome of the Rock, and any demolition would cause World War III. So these arguments are either wildly hypothetical or wildly apocalyptic. Rabbis have debated whether the resurrection of the dead at the end of days would see bodies rising with or without clothing. And would they emerge from the earth where they were buried, or would they travel through underground tunnels to Jerusalem and then emerge there? Rabbis have even disagreed over which shoe should be put on first, right or left. The answer: slip on the right shoe and then the left, but tie the left one first and then the right. On one hand, it is absurd to care about that level of detail, let alone argue about it. And apologies if you always put your shoes on exactly the same way. Sometimes, arguing for the sake of arguing has a point. In the first century of the Common Era, the two preeminent rabbis were Hillel and Shammai, who each established a school of thought. Centuries later, in the Babylonian Talmud, in a section about carrying on Shabbat called Eruvin, we read this passage. For 2.5 years, the house of Shammai and the house of Hillel disagreed. These said, it would have been better if humanity had not been created than to have been created. And those said, it is better that humanity has been created than had we not been created. Can you imagine a more useless argument? You are not going to change the reality that we are here. It's not even clear which house holds which position. And it says they argued this for 2.5 years. It's like a Jewish version of Descartes. I argue, therefore I am. The passage continues. They counted votes and concluded it would have been better if humanity had not been created than to have been created. However, now that we do exist, we should examine our actions in the past. Others say we should consider our actions for the future. If this argument had any reality to it, that would have meant the end of humanity. We lost. Given the actual reality that we were going to exist no matter how the vote turned out, the pointless argument becomes a moral exhortation, very appropriate for Yom Kippur. Consider what you have done. Consider what you will do, since you are lucky to be here. I do wonder, if we counted votes on this question tonight, would it be better for humans to exist or not? It might be a tie. How much worse can it get out there in the world beyond these walls? Seemingly endless war in Ukraine and Gaza, even if there may be a flicker of hope in the latter. Not to mention the 30,000 dead in Myanmar in the last 18 months, and 30,000 dead in Sudan who have gotten much less attention. Last month, anti-Semitic graffiti struck a synagogue in Vernon Hills, and there has been far worse violence against Jewish communities and individuals. It has gotten almost absurdly bad. In July, the Sesame Street Elmo Twitter account went on a racist and anti-Semitic rant. Elmo later said that Elmo had been hacked. In July, Grok AI also went on an anti-Semitic binge and called itself Mecha Hitler. This was perhaps even more disturbing because it was not the result of one bad actor, it was a programming tweak. One more reminder that the most powerful entity in the world is algorithm. Half of the time I read AI, I think it says al, so I assume it's algorithm. The world is unstable, angry, violent, fearful, defensive, aggressive, and perhaps worst, unpredictable. Is it any wonder that we are angry, fearful, and defensive? The Jewish high holidays are sometimes called the days of awe, in Hebrew, Yamim HaNoraim, literally the terrible days, when we are afraid that it will be decided who will live and who will die in the year just begun. Traditionally, Jews wish each other, Tikatevu v'tichatemu, or Gemar Chatima Tova, may you be written and sealed in the book of life for good. Humanistic Jews are not fatalists. We do not believe that what will be is written and sealed in heavenly volumes. This year, we can understand that traditional feeling of dread, that desire for even minimal control and confidence and hope. What else will go wrong? What new suffering awaits? They call it Murphy's Law, that whatever can go wrong will go wrong. That attitude has always felt a little bit Jewish to me. Of course, the first bar mitzvah we celebrated at Kol Hadash was for Sean Finnegan, so perhaps Murphy's Law is Jewish to expect the worst. I am not a sociologist. I am not a mass psychologist. I am not a therapist. My counseling tools are humanist philosophy and Jewish culture. I do have hope, both human hope and Jewish hope. We will speak more about hope in the morning, appropriately. Tonight, we need to acknowledge the realities that we face, and we need reasons to halt our decline into despair. Picture descending into a dark valley. We first need to slow and then stop our decline before we begin to climb. Consider one metric of hope and despair: the next generation. When I celebrate baby namings, I say that we are celebrating a brit, a covenant, or a special agreement. It is not a brit milah, or a bris, a covenant of male circumcision. It is a brit ahava, a covenant of love. A brit mishpacha, a covenant of family. A child is a covenant, a special agreement between the present and the future. Yet when the present is like our present, and the future looks like a disaster, can we fulfill those promises to our progeny? In 1950, at the height of the baby boom, the United States saw 24 live births per 1,000 people. In 1980, after the first impacts of birth control and feminism and legal abortion, it was 16 births per 1,000 people. In 2019, even before COVID, it was 11. There are many factors in this continued decline. More freedom of choice to not have kids or to have fewer. Marrying later or not at all can affect fertility. LGBTQ affirmation means accepting who you are before conventional marriage and 2 kids. Changing quality of life decisions. Non-parents report being happier than parents raising children, though having grandchildren sort of makes up for it, if you get them. One real factor is fear for the future. Social upheaval, political conflict, economic and environmental uncertainty. People ask, should I bring a child into this world? Beyond the question of having children, the more people become convinced that the system is corrupt, the deck is stacked against them, it's all going downhill, the more radical solutions they are willing to consider. Not just avoiding bringing new life into the world, at extremes being willing to end life, as we have seen tragically again and again. Shooting at political figures, or at ICE vehicles, or at a Mormon church. These are signs of despair and change by other means. If democracy is a failure, if capitalism leaves them behind, if the transformation in gender roles leaves some people feeling alone and bitter, burn it all down begins to sound reasonable. The joke rule of local news media was, if it bleeds, it leads. People who watch local news always overestimated the prevalence of violent crime, not to mention the racial identity of the criminals. It seems that the new rule of social media is, if it's outrageous, it's contagious. It is so much easier to go viral with offense and outrage than with nuanced balance and contradicting the conventional wisdom of your comfortable bubble. I was struck by something said recently by the governor of Utah, Spencer Cox, that we all need to hear. People keep waiting for someone to lead us out of this. I think that's a mistake. I don't think any one person, certainly not a governor, I don't think a president, I don't think anyone can change the trajectory of this. It is truly about every single one of us. And I can't emphasize enough the damage that social media and the internet is doing to all of us, those dopamine hits. The most powerful companies in the history of the world have figured out how to hack our brains, get us addicted to outrage, which is the same type of dopamine, the same chemical you get from taking fentanyl, getting us addicted to outrage and getting us to hate each other. The conflict entrepreneurs are taking advantage of us. We are losing our agency, and we have to take that back. We have to turn it off. We have to get back to community, caring about our neighbors, the things that made Americans great, serving each other, bettering ourselves, exercising, sleeping, all those things that this takes away from us. In a press conference, he put it even simpler. I would encourage people to log off, turn off, touch grass, hug a family member. There's a positive psychological reason that Jewish tradition has mourners stay in their home with close family after a loss. As we learned during the COVID lockdown, there is no replacement for a hug. Today, almost 1 in 5 Americans is being treated for depression, 48 million people. A decade ago, it was 1 in 10. More than a quarter of people aged 18 to 29, and a fifth of people aged 30 to 44, almost a quarter of all women, and over a quarter of those earning less than $48,000 a year. And those are just the people who have asked for help. There are many reasons that these depression numbers have gone up. A big rise coincided with the COVID pandemic and political upheaval. And maybe, like other conditions, depression is being diagnosed better, and people are more willing to accept treatment. In other words, the situation is bad, but it may not be getting as worse as it seems. More people getting help means less hopelessness. Family relations are deeply strained, arguing over memories and the past, arguing over politics or Israel in the present, arguing over future inheritance and life plans. The crises out there can definitely impact the crises in here by adding stress and helplessness and anger to the mix. I once spoke with someone dealing with lots of challenges all at once: family tension, personal financial stress, health problems, not to mention the dumpster fires in the world around them. They admitted somewhat sheepishly to feeling depressed about everything. I told them, sometimes being depressed is a rational response to reality. In other words, sometimes reality is sad, painful, and upsetting. We do not have to be happy and optimistic and joyful all the time. I remember the first Yom Kippur services I helped to lead as an assistant rabbi at the Birmingham Temple, now Congregation for Humanistic Judaism in Detroit. At the time, Rabbi Sherwin Wine's emphasis was on celebrating a Jewish New Year festival. So he wanted to uplift and inspire and excite people. And so he had us sing Hava Nagila on Yom Kippur, because it's a New Year festival, so you must be joyful. When I had the opportunity to create my own Yom Kippur observance, I did not want to go full doom and gloom, woe is me, and I have sinned, we have all sinned. Yet I also wanted a tone appropriate to self-reflection, even self-judgment, and making up for our mistakes. So, no Hava Nagila. You are the judges of whether I have successfully struck that balance of uplift and contemplation. We can emphasize our ability to direct the course of our lives while also admitting that some things are beyond our control. We can focus on our power and responsibility to do good while owning it when we fall short. Realistically facing reality and its problems is an important step to asserting true control over our lives. Imagining we are purely rational agents may work in theoretical economics or philosophy, but it is not who we are. Affirming reality is liberating and empowering, even if reality stinks. I once visited a family at a shiva after the father of 2 young adults had died of cancer. Changing the language to PG, I said to them, "This is terrible. It's okay to be mad because this is deeply unfair." No denial of their feelings or focusing on healing or heaven. They later told me how powerful it was to them to affirm their pain in that moment, to say, "This stinks." Even if I tend to be optimistic and hopeful, there are times that reality stinks, that denial is harmful, and acceptance is important. Don't feel bad for feeling bad. There is also our particular burden of Jewish despair. If people hate us, is it wise to raise a child to be a target? Is it wise for us to continue to be targets, to show up together and in public, to assert ourselves online and in person, or in a new Talmudic debate, would it be better if we had never been Jewish, even though we already are? Some wonder if this moment is the beginning of the end for Jewish diaspora life, or the end of Jewish thriving in America. Displaying the Jewish star, especially in blue and white, has become a source of stress and anger alongside heritage and pride. The subtlety of being Jewish yet Israel critical is lost on the newly emboldened online anti-Semite who spams generic posts about Jewish holidays by calling us the Church of Satan. I am heartened by the surging numbers of people over the last decade who, despite everything, have chosen to become Jewish, to affirm their Jewishness. Their conversion or adoption to Judaism is often the result of many years of searching, deepening their connections with Jewish culture and the Jewish people. And that is why Humanistic Judaism accepts anyone who, quote, declares themselves to be a Jew and who identifies with the history, ethical values, culture, civilization, community, and fate of the Jewish people. We usually emphasize the positives, like ethical values and culture. But the fact that they are identifying with the fate of the Jewish people in the midst of all our current difficulties, that gives me strength. In the description of this sermon, I asked, is it time to give up, or to flee, or to face the challenge? My response is to face it. Family conflict, political tensions, ideological divides. That does not mean I need to social media post on every single issue and incident. First and foremost, I need to know what is going on, and not just what I want to be the case. Choosing not to know, ignoring reality, may give the short-term blessing of ignorance, but like an ostrich with our head in the sand, reality will eventually find us and those we care about. We do not need a cosmic judge writing our name in a book of life to understand that what we do or say, and what we fail to do or say, that impacts the world around us. How can we thrive if the world falls apart? What happens in the world around us impacts the world within us. How can we be joyful if the world weeps? Perhaps facing reality helps us understand those who are in pain and then hurt others. In our extreme circumstances, if they can own their failures, we can offer forgiveness. Yom Kippur is a time of potential repair, but only if we admit the ruptures and our part in them. Would the world be better if humanity had never been created? The environmentalist might say yes. The architect might say no. The humanist agrees with the synthetic conclusion of the House of Shammai and the House of Hillel, who so rarely agreed. We do exist. We are human and part of the Jewish family and part of our own families and communities. Now that we do exist, we have two challenges: to examine our actions in the past and to consider our actions for the future. That will be the book of our life. Its conclusions and our fate remains in our hands. L'Shana Tova, wishing you a good and healthy new year.